Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Danielle with Smith Crafting, and today I thought I'd bring you guys a little begin tutorial on how to begin crocheting. This video is for absolute beginners or maybe even people who haven't crocheted in a long while and they need to revisit the basics. This video is going to focus on making a slip knot, making chains, and doing a foundation row. If you're anything like me when I first started, you're probably looking at crocheted things and thinking to yourself, like, that makes absolutely no sense to me. Like, how are people making crocheted bandanas? They're making crocheted clothing, like sweaters. They're also doing crazy things like making amigurumi, which is really just crocheted plushies in fancy terms. But no worries, it'll all soon make sense once you guys learn how to crochet. So to start crochet, you obviously need two things. You need yarn and a hook. And the absolute first thing that you need to do with that yarn before you're able to make any projects such as amigurumi, scarves, sweaters, or whatever, the first thing that you need to be able to do is make something called a slip knot. And the slip knot is super important to your work because it's going to hold everything together. It's going to be the very first building block. So I guess you could say that the slip knot is really the foundation of crochet. Now there are two components of the slip knot. To the right here, we have this dangling piece of yarn, and this is going to be called the tail yarn because it cuts off. And the piece that I'm pulling right now that leads to your skein or skein of yarn, however you pronounce it, this is going to be called your working yarn. This is what you're going to be crocheting with. This is what you're going to be pulling with your hook. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate how to make a slip knot. So before you begin making a slip knot, it's very important that you take the tail yarn and you line it up on the inside of your fingers. Now using your thumb, pinch it to the inside of your index or middle finger. And now once you do that, you want to take your working yarn from the back of your index finger to basically the tip of your middle finger, making a cross just like so. And you want to make sure that you're not doing it straight across, you want it to kind of be diagonal. Then you want to wrap your working yarn around the inside of your fingers, coming back around, and then at the top you want to cross it. So you want to make an X. So it should go from the tip of your index finger to the back of your middle finger. Now this is where you want to take your hook, the one you're working with, and from your middle finger, go under the very first piece of yarn and go ahead and grab the piece right behind it. And once you grab it with the hook, pull it through and pull it up. Then go ahead and with your thumb and your ring finger, hold on to both the tail yarn and the working yarn, and then go ahead and slip off the yarn from your index and middle finger, pull it up, and there you have it, your slip knot. And then what you can also do is you can take your tail yarn and you can pull it to make the loop smaller around your hook so it's not so big and ugly. Alright, we can go ahead and do it one more time. So again, use your thumb to take the tail yarn and pin it against your index or middle finger, then cross it diagonally from the back of your index finger to the tip of your middle finger and wrap it around the inside of both of those two fingers, and then cross it again at the top, making an X. So right here, I'm just going to pin it against my fingers to make sure that the yarn isn't going anywhere. But I'm going to go ahead and take my hook, go under the first piece from my middle finger, grab the one right behind it, pull it through and up. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pin the working yarn and the tail yarn together using my thumb and ring finger. And while they're pinned, I'm going to go ahead and pull the yarn off of those two fingers, pull it up, and I got my slip knot. Also, make sure not to make this mistake that I'm making right here. You notice that my tail yarn is in my left hand like I'm going to work with it. You don't want to work with the tail yarn, you want to work with your working yarn, which is why it's called your working yarn. So make sure your tail yarn is in the hand that your hook is in so that you're not going to accidentally start crocheting with the tail yarn. So now that we know how to make a slip knot, I'm going to show you guys the best way to hold your yarn so that you can comfortably make chains. And I'm also just going to drop my right hand because it'll get a little busy. So look closely at how I'm holding my work here. Here's our slip knot, and you can see my middle finger and my thumb are holding the tail yarn right underneath that slip knot, like real close to it. You don't want to hold it way too far or else you're not going to have much control. And also notice my working yarn is wrapped around my index finger from the inside going towards the back and is being pinned by my middle finger so that I can create tension. Now this is how I like to hold my work. It might not work for everyone, but I'm just showing you guys what I do, and maybe some of y'all might like it. Alright, so I'm going to bring in my right hand now because I'm right-handed, and this is how I hold my hook. I am a pencil gripper, y'all. I'm sorry. I like to hold my hook this way. Other people like to do knife grip. I have to show it because I don't do knife grip a lot. But knife grip is when there's no bend in any of your fingers and it's really just your thumb, your index finger, and your middle finger all holding the hook together. And it creates this really loose tension. I also heard that apparently it decreases the chances of you getting pain in your wrist whenever you're crocheting. I'm gonna be so honest, guys. I just like pencil grip. I'm someone who has a very tight tension, so pencil grip works wonders for me. Alright, now let's get started with learning how to do chains. So I'm gonna start from the beginning, have my tail yarn and my working yarn, and I'm just gonna restart with the slip knot here so you can see what I'm doing again. So remember how we make our slip knot by doing the cross and then grabbing our yarn from underneath and pulling it off our fingers to make that beautiful slip knot, quick and easy. Alright, and then I'm gonna show you guys real up close what I'm doing here. So I'm holding the working yarn taut with my index finger, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to go under that working yarn and I'm going to wrap around with the hook. Now I'm going to use the hook and snag it and pull it through that loop to create my very first beautiful chain. So let's just do that one more time. I'm going to go under with the hook, wrap it around, and then I'm going to pull it through that loop again, and now I have my second chain. Now it's also very important to note the size of the loop on my hook. You don't want it to be too big, you also don't want it to be too small. Now if it's too small, then you can't get the hook through, and if it's too big, I mean look at this, it's a big ugly loop. You don't want that. So make sure that the loop is about the size of the hook with a little bit of room so that the hook can slip out and back in easily. So literally the size of the hook, and then give it like, I don't know, about a millimeter. Alright, and just one last time to make sure we got it, go underneath with the hook, wrap it around the yarn, and then pull it through. Another thing to note is the direction that your hook is facing whenever you're pulling the yarn through. It is very important that your hook isn't facing all sorts of directions. You mainly want it to only face you or to face the ground. So it should only be facing sideways or down. You don't want it to face away from you because, as you just saw, I had trouble getting it through the loop. When the hook faces down, it kind of takes advantage of that little itty bitty space that you gave it whenever you made that loop, that little millimeter that I said to leave, and it becomes a lot easier for that hook to get through. And so as a beginner, the greatest challenge with making chains is learning your tension. That's something that no one can teach. You just need to practice making chains, and you will find your tension. You will find the best way to hold your work, the best way to hold your hook, and in no time, as long as you practice enough, you'll be able to make chains lickety-split just like this. Another challenge that beginners face is what to do whenever you split the yarn. So I'm going to go ahead and purposefully split the yarn here so you guys can see what happens. And as you can see, there's a visible separation between the loop that is currently on my hook and the loop that was previously on my hook. So they will separate themselves, and all you have to do is just grab the loop that you wanted to go through and just finish pulling it through. If you ever get confused, you can always just undo the loop and redo it. It's no big deal. And there is another way that you can split your yarn. You can split the working yarn as you're pulling it through, but it'll be really obvious. I mean, look at this whenever I try to pull it through. And I know a lot of you are cringing at this because, oh my God, I feel like I'm destroying my yarn when you're doing this. But you can just pull out your loops, and then all you have to do is just massage your working yarn and it'll look like nothing happened. Well, I mean, something did happen. You can kind of see it a little bit when I begin to crochet again. The ply did kind of come apart a little bit, but once you crochet it in, it's okay. No one's even gonna notice. So when you are working your chains, you want to make sure that they are all even. They all look the same. As you can see here, this chain I just made, they're all beautiful and equal. I also just made a chain with a bunch of uneven ones, and as you can see, it is wonky. I mean, right here we have one that's huge, and this is from the loop being way too big. And then right above it, we have all these teeny tiny ones. That's from the loop being way too small and me forcing the yarn through. So you do not want your chains to be looking like that. You want them to be nice and even. So when you mess up like that, I would just undo them and then go ahead and do them again so that you can get some practice in with making them looking beautiful and even. And the great thing about crochet is that if you really mess up, it's okay. It's not the end of the world, because watch this. All you have to do is take the working yarn and pull it, and watch this. It just comes out so easily. And honestly, it's really satisfying. And just look at this. It's almost as if that chain never even happened. Thank you for watching my tutorial. I hope you learned something today. And if you did, hit that like and subscribe so you can see more of my tutorials in the future.